My hot take is that the Grizzlies would rather build around Jaren Jackson Jr. than Ja Morant right now. They were last in the league. I think it's an amazing trade. It is absolutely a steal for the Orlando Magic. So let's talk about this blockbuster trade that just happened today. I know there has been a lot of kind of controversy around this trade, which I don't really understand, for the Orlando Magic rather. So let's get into that and what I think about this trade. So if you didn't know, the trade that went down today is the Orlando Magic got Desmond Bane from the Memphis Grizzlies, and they gave up KCP, Cole Anthony, 4 unprotected first-round picks, which was their 2025 15th pick in this year's draft, their 2026 pick unprotected, their 2028 pick unprotected, 2030 unprotected, and then 29 is top 2 protected. So that is what they gave up to get Desmond Bane. Now, right off the bat, a lot of people were saying, whoa, like 4 unprotected first-round picks, and then obviously, Cole Anthony and, KCP for Desmond Bane. And people were saying, or their initial reaction was basically like, if this is what it costs to get Desmond Bane, what's it going to cost to get Giannis, stuff like that. And people are talking about how Luka only went for 1 first-round pick, which we all know is a crime. 1 first-round pick for Luka is a crime. But to say all that to say, you have to understand that each trade for each team is situational. And it doesn't always add up to the same value when it's certain teams doing certain deals. So what I mean by that is, and this is something that really, I don't want to say annoyed me, but something that I was just kind of not agreeing with in the media and the, NBA talk around the league, was that everyone kept talking about Mikal Bridges. They traded 5 first-round picks for him, and he's not playing like he's worth 5 first-round picks. That's what people were saying about Mikal Bridges in the playoffs, stuff like that, right? I did not like that narrative, because what people are forgetting is context. Mikal Bridges was going for 5 first-round picks because you know where he came from? The Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets and the New York Knicks are rivals. They are literally playing in the same state with one another. The Brooklyn Nets will refuse to do a deal with the New York Knicks any day of the week, and same vice versa, unless the deal is so overwhelmingly like, we can't not accept this. That's the only way they'll do a deal. If Mikal Bridges was on the Washington Wizards, it wouldn't have been 5 first-round picks. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, every deal is situational. So I didn't like that narrative around Mikal Bridges, because the only reason it cost 5 first, not that he would have gone for free, but like the only reason it was 5 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges was because he was coming from the Brooklyn Nets. That is the only reason. And the Knicks basically offered them a deal that they couldn't refuse, because they really wanted to pair Mikal Bridges, with his old teammates of Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson and stuff like that. So the only way to get it done was to overpay, so to speak, for Mikal Bridges. So I just wanted to make that clear, because I feel like people are forgetting that's exactly what happened. They didn't just trade 5 first-round picks for him from anywhere, you know what I mean? And again, Mikal Bridges is a very good player. I think, he got talked down about in the playoffs for like no reason, in my opinion, because he was doing so much, he's so much responsibility defensively. But regardless, remember, he went for 5 first-round picks because he came from the rival, the Brooklyn Nets, and the only way they would have traded him was to, quote-unquote overpay. So I say all that to say, to go back to the Desmond Bane trade that happened today. Like I said, it's situational, because people are saying, oh, but what would Giannis cost? Well, the reason that the Orlando Magic had to give up 4 unprotected first-round picks, and also I'll tell you how they may not be so valuable for the Orlando Magic anyway, but the reason they did is they attached KCP's contract. Now, if you don't remember, they gave KCP 3-year, $80 million last offseason, like some kind of like significant contract they gave him. So, the way that KCP played last year did not live up to the contract that they paid him, for. And that doesn't mean KCP won't have a better year. Maybe he just had an off year. But the fact of the matter is, it was a down year for him. And because of that, his value went down to other teams around the league. So The reason that they had to give up 4 first-round pick, well, 5, but 4 unprotected, was one of those picks at least, maybe 2, but I'll say 1. One of those unprotected first-round picks was just to offload KCP's contract. Like, you have to remember, they had to attach a pick just to get his contract off. The same way that something like that happened a couple years ago. I forgot what team it was, but there was something like that a couple years ago where a team traded a player who had a significant contract to a team who wasn't like in a winning situation. I don't remember who it was, but I just remember this happening. And that team had attached a first-round pick of theirs to that player to get the team to take on the contract. So that is not, new by any means. But so that's already 1 pick technically taken away. So technically we're talking about 3 unprotected first-round picks now for Desmond Bane and 1 pick swap, right? So with all that being said, so now we say, okay, 3 unprotected first-round picks. So the thing is, 1 pick is their pick from this year's draft, which is the 15th pick overall. And then we have 2026, 2028, and 2030 as the unprotected picks. We'll ignore 2030 because that's a little far away, but 2025 and 2026 at least, right? They are expecting to be contenders. They expect to be a championship contender in their minds now that they got Desmond Bane, and maybe they'll pick up a couple other people in the offseason, veteran minimums and stuff like that. Because it's, a team that's on the rise. They have a lot of good players. It's an attractive place to play and stuff like that. So, the 2025 pick and their 2026 pick, even more so potentially, depending on how they do next season, isn't really of value to them because they don't need to keep just drafting guys anymore. They did that. They have so many players on their team who are young and they drafted, like Franz Wagner and Paolo, but we don't just have that. You have Wendell Carter Jr. and you have Anthony Black and you had Cole Anthony, but you traded him. You still have Jalen Suggs. Like, they don't need to draft anybody else. That's the point. Like, the picks are not really of value to them because anybody that they would be drafting probably wouldn't really get playing time. I mean, maybe some players are able to crack the rotation right away. Fair enough. But, like, they don't need to take a chance on a potential somebody coming out of college or whatever. If they know Desmond Bane, which we know who he is and what he does, and he fits perfectly, which is why, again, I think it's an amazing trade. I think this is an absolutely incredible trade for the Orlando Magic. But to say all that to say, instead of having to take a chance and trying to figure out who might turn into, the best player, there's always an opportunity cost, drafting and trading. But at least in this scenario, you know what you're going to get out of Desmond Bane. You don't have to wait for him to be ready or to know if he's going to fit. So now, talking about the actual player Desmond Bane, this is really a win-win for both teams. Trades that are win-wins don't always happen, but it is for both teams, and I'll tell you why. So, sticking with the Orlando Magic, trading for Desmond Bane, do you know what the Orlando Magic, what their problem was last season? They were last in the league. I think in three-point percentage, in catch and shoot threes, they were not a good three-point shooting team. And what do we know? What do we all know they struggled with? Offense. Putting points on the board, there was just not enough scoring. Like, Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner were, it was really heavily relied on them two in the series against Boston. And because they have such to be fair, Jalen Suggs was out, so that is obviously a big factor. But even still, they were so heavily relied on. And because their defense was so good, it kept them in every game pretty much. But can you imagine if they had that defense combined with another 20-point per game scorer in Desmond Bane, who can shoot the three over 40%? That is a crazy, addition to the team. So I say that to say, Desmond Bane is the perfect fit. He is, just like I told you, a very good three-point shooter, shoots over 40% from three, average 20 points, over 20 points per game. He can rebound the ball a bit. He can pass the ball too. I don't expect him to get triple doubles or anything like that, but he can do a little bit of everything and he can contribute in other ways. He fits the timeline. He's literally on the perfect timeline for Paolo and Franz Wagner. He has a little bit of playoff experience, obviously, with the Grizzlies. He seems like a pretty smart player, to say the least, right? And one of the most important things is he literally gives them floor spacing, which is something they did not have. Because you're not going to, tell Desmond, you're not going to dare him to shoot the three. You're going to guard him. So what does that do? That opens up the floor for Paolo and Franz Wagner, who are not the best three-point shooters, especially Paolo, who is working on it, but like his game is, inside out, so to speak, right? Like you want Paolo driving down the lane, getting a dunk, going to the basket, posting people up, whatever, stuff like that. You don't want Paolo standing on the three-point line, and Paolo is so strong, even at his young age, and he's so physically gifted and stuff like that. He's just going to push people out of the way. So he's going to have an advantage a lot of the time. So now, if you have Paolo posting somebody up, backing them down, kick it out to Desmond Bane for three. That might be cash a lot of the time. You see what I'm saying? So now, instead of Paolo Banchero having to take a really tough and maybe bad shot over two defenders, Desmond Bane's wide open in the corner. 3 easy points. So you're spacing the floor for Paolo. You're obviously getting more scoring from Desmond Bane. So that just alone literally gives you a better chance to win, because now you're going to have more points on the board no matter what. Like, he's going to score something. And so you have now 3 offensive options, like top offensive options on the team. Paolo's still going to be number 1, stuff like that. But like, at least you have now 3 offensive options, and one of them is a three-point shooter more so. And even if all else fails, if, Desmond Bane's having an off season for whatever reason, right? Everybody, including Paolo and Franz Wagner, gets to conserve energy. And at the end of the game, you need to be able to put it into extra gear. You need that like extra gear to put it into. Because at the end of the game is when you need to really lock in. And Paolo and Franz had to do so much that by the end of the game, like, they were exhausted. Like, there was not much more you could ask, if at anything, if at all, rather, to ask of Paolo and Franz offensively. And so I say all that to say, now their legs won't be as tired at the end of the game. I understand they're young and they're not going to get as tired as someone who's older, but at the same time, you still get tired. So now they're going to at least, if the game is, a 2-point game, you can imagine and think that Paolo is going to have more energy to maybe take an extra, drive to the basket rather than settle for a jumper because his legs are not there, right? So you have that effect. Just, it's like a butterfly effect, as people like to say. This is like, it could trickle down to so many different things. And I think Desmond Bane is a great fit. I think Desmond Bane is exactly what they needed last year, exactly what they need now. They obviously tried to have KCP be that, which is why they gave him that contract, because KCP, was known as a 3-and-D guy. But he didn't have his best year. He also is a little bit older on the timeline, but I like the pickup of KCP because he brings championship experience and veteran leadership. He's been there, done that. So I think they made the right move when they signed him. I think it made sense. It just didn't work out. Now they ended up with, an upgrade for their team at this time. And I think it's an amazing trade for them. Perfect trade. So now we go to the Memphis Grizzlies side. So why is this an amazing, well, I think it's a win-win. I think it's a better trade for Orlando, though. But I think it's still a good trade for Memphis, depending on who they end up drafting, right? Like, that obviously determines, some things. Because we know who Orlando got. Like, we know the type of player they got and what type of team they have. I still think it's a really, really good trade for Memphis. And this is why. The Memphis Grizzlies, a few years ago, 3 years ago or so, they were, given the name of like the next team up. Like, people thought they were the next team to win the championship. And then a lot of things have happened in the last 3 years to derail that. So they had a lot of money tied up in John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr., who is extension eligible, which is going to factor into what I'm about to say. And then Desmond Bane just got that really big contract. So he still has like 4 years left, which is also something important for Orlando because they don't have to pay him or worry about him like wanting to leave. Like, he is locked up for the next few years. So they're good there. So with the new CBA, which we talk about a lot on this channel, and a lot of people talk about because it really, unfortunately, is hindering a lot of teams from making certain moves or making them make certain moves to get to below second apron or not have these financial implications. So the Grizzlies were trying to clear some money so that they could extend Jaren Jackson Jr. and pay him all the money that is going to be whatever the max, is for him. And obviously getting Desmond Bane's money off the books gives them more financial flexibility. Even though Jaren Jackson, obviously they have his bird rights, if they extend him and they still have Desmond Bane's money on the books, it's going to put them into higher tax aprons. I don't know exactly where they are or where they would be if they extend Jaren and they kept Desmond Bane, but it might be something in the second apron, which is not something they necessarily maybe want to do. I have to look at their numbers. But the point is they wanted to clear money to extend Jaren Jackson Jr. That's one thing. So in my opinion, Jaren Jackson Jr. is not going anywhere. That's what I think. I think they're really focused on JJJ. Ja Morant is interesting. I don't think he's going anywhere necessarily yet, but I don't know if this is a hot take or not. Like, you tell me. But my hot take is that the Grizzlies would rather build around Jaren Jackson Jr. than Ja Morant right now. I don't know if that's a hot take. I don't know how people feel about that. And that's not to say that they don't value Ja the same way. And that's not to say they're not going to also build around Ja. As I said, I don't think they're currently trading him. But I feel like at this very moment, the Grizzlies are more focused on building around Jaren Jackson Jr. than Ja Morant. I don't know if that's true. I have no inside information if that's true. It just feels like that to me. You know what I mean? It feels like they are relying more on Jaren Jackson Jr. So I said that to say. So Jaren Jackson Jr. was one of the motivations to, move Desmond Bane. Obviously, the financial implications is another thing. The other thing is that, and the reason why it's a good trade for the Memphis Grizzlies, they just got 5 first-round picks for Desmond Bane. They had to take on KCP's money, fair enough, but KCP's contract was shorter and smaller than Desmond Bane, so that's number one. Number two, they could, I think, still move KCP to another team because another team might want him. He's still a valuable player. Maybe they can trade him and, get a little something back. So we'll see about that. The same way that the Blazers got Drew Holiday. Obviously, he was more valued around the league than KCP is right now, but same thing. They moved him once they got him, so they traded and got more assets. So keep that in mind. But the other thing is that you got 5 first-round picks. That Memphis Grizzlies team is really good at drafting players. There are a few teams in the league where their draft and scouting department seems to hit on a lot of players. And the Grizzlies are one of them. Because if you look at their bench, whenever someone comes off the bench, any one of them is oh, they're getting 20. And they may not be the big box office names, but somehow they all know how to get 20. You know what I mean? So you have now 5 opportunities to draft somebody who, if you end up having to go in a rebuild mode at some point in these next 5 years, you have an opportunity to do that. Now, again, Orlando should be good. So it's not necessarily going to be, a top pick or maybe even a lottery pick, but you never know what happens in the season. We don't wish injuries upon anyone. Please don't wish injuries upon anyone. But what if the Orlando Magic just have one of those seasons where they are injury riddled and now you have the number 1 overall pick in the 2028 NBA draft? You know what I mean? So the Memphis Grizzlies are sitting in a really good spot right now because now they also have assets to also, if they don't want to use those picks, to make another trade. And I am not saying this is happening, but what if they get to the point where they actually want to trade Ja Morant? Imagine you have Ja Morant and you take one of those unprotected first-round picks. Not that you need to package him with the pick anyway, but imagine, whoa, it's getting crazy. That could be crazy. So thank you guys so much for watching this live stream. I hope you enjoyed and see you next time.